You're listening to the Music Ed Mentor podcast, where we help music educators build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. And this episode is one of the long and happy careers ones. I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones, and I am so honored that you will spend this time with me and this amazing interview with Alex Shapiro. I hope that you're in a good place to sit, relax, and just enjoy this episode. Unless you're like me and you listen while you're working out, that's cool too. But this episode, this discussion with Alex is one that I will never forget. Alex is a composer by trade, but she is so much more than that. She's taken wind band music especially to a whole new level by incorporating recorded sounds, electronica, so much more. Please look up her music. It's amazing. But she's also an environmental activist, a thought leader, a mentor, an artist. She is a creator in every sense of the word. In this episode, we talk about life, finding meaning, living with passion, the Creative Repertoire Initiative, which if you haven't heard of this, it's going to make your whole year right now. And we talk about how you can change your perspective about this whole new digital realm that we've discovered. All of that and so much more in this impactful discussion. But first, if you're looking to streamline your performance assessments this coming school year so you can spend more time in face-to-face rehearsals, look no further than Smart Music. With the most robust content library available, Smart Music makes it easy to select and assign assignments to students and streamlines your grading as well. Look more and learn more at smartmusic.com. Without further discourse, here is my discourse with Alex Shapiro. So I normally start this with having you introduce yourself for the audience, because even though we can read your bio, we've probably heard you speak before. I want to hear how you speak of yourself. Would that be an okay way for us to?
Sure. Hopefully with humility and gratitude is how I would speak of myself, because I think we all feel this sometimes. You get to a certain point in your life, and if your life is going well, you think, oh my gosh, how in the world, despite all the odds and all the stupid bonehead things I've done in my life, how did I get to this point of being, happy and functional and not lying in a gutter somewhere? I mean, that's really how I would introduce myself. As I look back, I was just saying this to my husband, Dan. We were talking about this earlier this week, interestingly, about how you look back at most of us, a lot of us, who are slow learners like me. My 20s and 30s were a time of kind of knowing. I knew one thing. I knew I was a composer, but beyond that, I was really kind of lost. And it was pre-internet. It was there weren't quite so many tools and resources as there are now for kind of getting started. And I was in a really big city. I'd moved from New York to LA. So after 24 years in LA, I figured it out and how to make community in a very large and vast space. But I think I was really flailing for a long time. And I think about all the mistakes and errors and bad choices and bad judgment, that I had, that I think most human beings go through. And then I think about how kind of the skies parted and I started to figure things out, probably not any sooner than my 40s. And then definitely once I was 50 and beyond. And now I'm 59 and a half. So I've had, 9 good years at least. But it's like I describe myself as someone who's just constantly trying to figure it out and hopefully help other people figure it out too. Like if I figure out something that works, my first instinct is to want to share that with other people, whether it's about music or just about, life. Like we should all be helping each other through this, because there is no user manual for life, as we have all discovered.
That is extremely true. And on your website, we see you're not only a composer, you're obviously a prolific speaker and writer and environmental activist. Do you want to tell us about your environmental activism?
Sure. It's kind of twofold. And I do some of that activism, I think, through some of my music, not all of it. But when you have a chance to use the sounds of the ocean or the sounds of humpback whales or photographs of sea creatures and sea life alongside with multimedia presentations of your work, it helps raise awareness, and it builds an affinity between your heart and what you care about as a composer, and in this case, the environment, and that of the musicians playing the work and the audiences. It's this beautiful connective thing that happens. So there's that kind of activism. And then in a little bit more roll up your sleeves, I've been on the board of the advancement board of the Friday Harbor Laboratories, which is an arm of the University of Washington. It's a very, very distinctive marine research center, one of the great ones in the country. And it happens to be right here where I live on San Juan Island. So I joined that board shortly after I moved here to the island. And so I guess I've been on the board almost 14, 15 years now, because I moved here in 2007. And that has been a great joy, too, to participate in helping younger researchers come here and work, and sometimes doing some fundraisers and other things, and just getting a chance to intersect as a musician with the science community, and that's pretty thrilling too. So for me, a lot of activism, the older I get, the more I think about it as something that absolutely everybody can do, and it has to do with, as I mentioned before, awareness raising. However you do that. I mean, sure, it has to do with fundraising too for a lot of things. You know, we need money for all these wonderful organizations, but it starts with building that affinity. And how do you do that? You share your feelings emotionally about the things you care about with other people, and you get them excited about it too. And art happens to be a great portal for this, as we discover, right? And this is no secret. It's a great way to communicate. And so the older I get, the more I make use of this, and the more I think about this for all kinds of things. I mean, I have a piece premiering next month, a very big piece, 4-movement electroacoustic wind symphony. And it might be my best thing ever. And it's called Suspended. And that one is not so much about environmental issues, although they play into this, it's climate change, things like that, but sort of just about the state of the world. You know, the program notes are pretty direct. And, making it clear that we can do a lot better than what we're doing. This has been a very disappointing time in human history on certain levels. And I find great power in being able to make these communications with other humans through music. So it's about environment, it's about human rights, it's about all kinds of issues. It's about decency, too. I'm appalled when I see how people treat each other on social media. Just because we're not in the room together, somehow they feel that they can let loose in all kinds of really vile ways with people they don't even know. I'm just shocked by the behavior and how that's become kind of the norm. So anything we can do to speak about that is a good thing. Bring it to people's attentions.
Yeah, having been in that position of being pretty I don't know how to describe it, attacked on social media simply for my role in being a founder of a very large group. And thus, apparently, it's my job to police everyone. And it's challenging, but I've also found so much joy through social media and the way that I connect with people. And I think that some of it is just that I have amazing people that I'm connected with, yourself included, right?
Thank you. And I totally agree. I mean, I say to people, I share your enthusiasm for social media. I use it constantly. And I agree with the point you're saying is what I say all the time. Choose your friends, your quote unquote friends, your colleagues, your connections wisely. And anybody who's a jerk, get rid of them. Don't have them in your newsfeed. Don't have them in your life any more than, my attitude is I won't have somebody as a Facebook friend that I wouldn't want to have over for a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, in my house. I mean, it's really pretty that simple. They have to be a decent person. And if we don't, if someone wants to friend me and it's clear from their page, their profile page, and the things that they post and the things they have to say, if it's clear that we're not on the same wavelength, forget it. I'm not interested. Life is too short.
I completely agree. I worry that we're too sensitive about what other people think about us or how we're going to make other people feel if we unfriend them. But, a few years ago, I separated myself from some of my very close family members because of the toxicity involved in those relationships. I just had to acknowledge that being with them was not a joyful experience for me. And so I just, without remorse, said, until I can come into my own and be deep enough in myself and my own confidence, I'm going to just separate myself from you for a while. And
I think that's wise.
We have to nurture ourselves first. So, speaking of nurturing, I feel like you have just so effectively built your life around your passions. So does this phrase of work-life balance exist for you? Because I have some deep thoughts on the work-life balance thing, but I want to hear you.
This will be a great conversation. I want to hear your thoughts about it because I'm of two minds. I feel on one hand, there's tremendous balance because I get to do all these wonderful things all the time. And conversely, on the other hand, there's a complete constant imbalance because there's all these wonderful things to do all the time. And it's very hard to do them. You can't do them simultaneously. We are serial creatures. Even computers, by the way, do things serially. A computer does things incredibly fast. And so we think somehow that it's doing these amazing things all at once. But it's not. It's just doing them incredibly fast, one after another after another. We are the same way, except we're not incredibly fast. We're much smaller. Slower, rather. We're much slower. And so I find, as everybody does who's got a full life, and if you're lucky enough to have a full life filled with the things of your choosing, the people, the work, the environment, all these wonderful things, and hopefully your health, which of course, is the very, very important for enjoying all the others. If you're lucky enough to have these things, it can be completely overwhelming because there's so much joy and so much you want to do, and you can't do it all at once because you're a serial creature, SCRIAL, as opposed to CEREAL, which would be a lot crunchier.
Oh, I love homophones. Please continue.
So yeah, I think maybe it's it's a great illusion, the concept of being able to have it all and do it all at the same time. But I don't think it's an illusion that one can have a tremendously happy life filled with all the things you want. I think it's just a matter of the balance, as you said before, can be elusive some days and weeks. Sometimes more than others. I will tell you, when I was finishing this symphony, the last month or two, it was insane. It was a very big piece and a very complicated piece. And I was just holed up in this wonderful studio, but still, it's a room. I was holed up here for a very long time, like a little maniac, going to bed at 5 a.m. and with blinders on, not hardly ever, seeing friends. Even during COVID here on the island, we get together outside, we take hikes and walks, and it's wonderful. But I was not feeling very social. Frankly, Dan is a saint because under normal circumstances, he's the cook of the family and he loves to cook and bake and clean and all that stuff in addition to what he does as a professional woodworker and furniture builder and everything else. So he took the helm and I literally didn't even clean the house for the past 4 months. He did everything. I was a terrible hausfrau, right? Because I was so completely consumed. I would consider that a life out of balance if you don't have a moment to clean your bathroom. That's pathetic, but it was like that. And my other advice is always we should be so lucky as to have wonderful partners who have no complaint picking up the slack when they see that you're crazed in your crazed creative mode. And as I promised him, and it's certainly true now because I'm about a week and a half out, maybe 2 weeks now from finishing the damn thing. And I'm a different person. And we joke about it because now I'm really social and I'm really happy to clean and do things around the house and, see friends and all these. I've got my life back. So there's an example of out of balance, but in a happy way. Like I'm consumed with work that I love, but there wasn't room for me to meet those deadlines. There was not room for me to do a lot of other normal life things. Exercise went out the window. Now I'm back on my bike. Yay. All these things. So yeah, I want to hear what you have to say about this.
First of all, if I come visit, I'm bringing a bike.
Definitely bring a bike. But actually, in my case, I was talking about my stationary bike. I've got a really hip stationary bike that I love, and I can watch Netflix while I'm pounding away at it.
Well, either way, I'm a big cyclist, so
Great. This is a great cycling area. You can use my bike, actually. I've got a great mountain bike, and the islands are fantastic for bike riding. Really
Okay.
great.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Work
Come
life.
visit.
Oh, you can hear it in my voice. I'm already planning the trip. So
Yay.
I think you bring up really good things I think that there is no such thing as balance. Just like, the boat on the ocean is sometimes in the harbor and we're sometimes out at sea. And that's just the role of the boat. Life ebbs and flows, and sometimes we have to be more intensely focused on our family, and sometimes we are more intensely focused on our work. I run these big online events, and it's an intensive process for me. I'm in the background on 4 or 5 different webinars at a time. I'm coaching people constantly. I'm mitigating all of these risks. I'm dealing with technology issues. I'm responding to people. It's a very intensive time for me. And that's just what it is. That's when I'm out at sea. There's a storm going on. And I am also very fortunate to have great people around me who build me up and support me in those times. And then there are times when, I'm on a week-long bike trip and it's a completely different thing. So I think, first of all, recognizing that it's never going to be equanimous amongst all of your great activities in your life. And so there is no such thing as work-life balance. Work is life. Work is part of your life. And I think until you acknowledge that life happens at work just as well as it happens at home, you're always going to feel out of balance because you're going to not be acknowledging that work is life,
I think that's brilliant. I think that is the crux of the issue, because what you're talking about is taking on the power to develop for oneself a holistic approach to one's life, where you are making choices that are all good choices for you, surrounding yourself with good people, good environment, work that you love, to the best of your ability, and taking care of your health, at the same time, taking care of yourself. And that you're describing the fact that it boils down to whatever you're doing in whatever balance or imbalance it is should be holistically connected. It's not compartmentalized, and it should all be something that makes you joyous, something that makes you happy.
Precisely. I mean, if we're feeling out of balance too, we can find other areas. When I feel out of balance, it's not between my work life, my play life, my family life. It's between serving myself and what I can give to others. And I think that balance is what more often, especially, speaking for music educators, can be so out of balance. We forget that though teaching and being around people is such a joy for us, we also need to be with ourselves and to renew who we are. And if we aren't doing that, we can be quite out of balance. And that could be, not actually even doing anything, but sitting on our stationary bike, riding, reading, or watching Netflix. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I got to tell you, I have such enormous respect for educators. And when I look at, because I am not one myself. I mean, I'm a guest educator, I guess, but I'm not a full-time teacher or anything. But when I look at all my colleagues who do this day in and day out with gazillions of students, and the amount of energy and care that they give and attention and detail that they give to all these other people, wanting to nurture them and wanting to help them grow and become their best selves. And it has to be exhausting, and there is often not enough time for them to balance it out with just downtime, because everybody needs downtime. I mean, even, my busiest day might be 4 Zooms in a day or something, but that's peanuts compared to what a lot of teachers have to do, throughout the day or in lifetime when we're back in the classrooms together. And I'm exhausted after even 2 or 3 of these things, much less 4. It's really tiring. And I think about what the educators go through on a day-to-day basis. They don't have the luxury like I do of saying, oh, I'm going to cordon off these 2 days where there won't be any Zooms and I'm just going to do my thing, which in my case would be writing or whatever I'm dealing with, running my publishing company, all the other things I have to do. But I have that choice. Someone who's a salaried educator doesn't have that choice. And so my hat's off to them. It's exhausting work, and it's such noble and beautiful work.
So you have, speaking of supporting music educators, you and many other composers have really truly opened up, reached out, and pivoted your own publishing companies, your own publications to support music teachers through this last year of teaching online and through the pandemic. Can you tell me about how did that initiate, and how has that work gone now that it's been more than a year?
Yeah, it's been amazing. We can thank conductors Robert Ambrose and Alan McMurray, I think, and maybe Frank Ticelli. I think they started with the germ of the idea of what became very quickly the Creative Repertoire Initiative, which was formed last spring of 2020, when we were about a month and a half into the pandemic and the shutdown, and it quickly became evident this wasn't going to go away anytime soon, and that by the fall of 2020, music educators, ensemble directors, etc., were going to really need repertoire that didn't exist a whole lot at the moment, that would be completely flexible for whatever their needs were going to be. We didn't know if they were going to be hybrid, if they were going to be purely online, if they were showing up in person, maybe it was only going to be, 3 ferrets playing kazoos. Who knows who's going to walk through the door, right? And it's got to be, and we realized that we've got to help with repertoire that would serve any purpose, any combination of instrumentalists and students who would be showing up in whatever form. So we got busy, and those 3 gentlemen put together, they kind of handpicked a group of mostly band composers, and we all write other kinds of music too, but most of us are probably best known in the band world, because the band world is, of course, an enormous intersection with the music education world. So, duh, made sense. And so about 10 composers, including myself, got together. We started meeting on Zoom and brainstorming about this, and it didn't take us very long at all to figure out that Creative Repertoire Initiative, which we came up, I think with the first meeting, we came up with that cool name, and something that would support adaptable music, and the subset of that, which would be flex music, is something we could do on 2 levels. One, all of us in the group pledged to, we said we were going to publish adaptable pieces. And for some people, that meant going back into their catalogs and reworking and rearranging, pieces that were already written. And for others, like me, that meant writing some new pieces, because my brain does not work very well in reverse. I went back to look at a couple of my pieces that I actually thought would be pretty easy to adapt. And then it dawned on me, they're so easy to adapt, nothing needs to be adapted with them. It's the kind of thing that literally those 3 ferrets, playing kazoos could show up and play these pieces, and they would sound just fine. So instead, I started with something new, which we can talk about later. But we all did something to put something fresh into the repertoire. Then, most importantly, I think, more importantly than what we did, is we started a Facebook group. And I think it's called the Creative Repertoire Initiative Facebook group, or whatever it's called.
Let me type really loud while I find it here.
Yeah, we'll find a link, and it'll be up on I'm sure on your podcast site. And so we started this group with the hope that it would be basically a really cool matchmaking service between the music educators, the ensemble directors, and the composers. And we wanted to encourage every composer who would come across us and this site to go and write this kind of music, to flood the repertoire with this much needed kind of music. And boy, did it work. I think we now have either 5,500 or 5,600 members. It's unbelievable. We hit 5,000 members within like 2 months or something of this group. Everybody was on board. Everybody was excited about this, and they saw the need for it. And and then the CRI founders, I think, had a profoundly wonderful time just meeting with each other, connecting with each other on this subject. And I think personally we got all of us a lot out of this, because we felt very supported by each other, because everybody was isolated. And so a lot of new friendships. We all knew each other, but some of us now know each other a lot better because of this. And it's just been really joyous. It's such an affable group of people. When you go to the website, you'll see all the names of the group. And superb composers, every one of them, and wonderful people. And so it was just a win. It was a really positive experience. And we have now put an awful lot of new works in the rep because of that initiative. And if you go on to windrep.org, you'll see that they were kind enough to even put not only an adaptable music section, they added that to their extensive database. It's a wonderful site for those of you who haven't visited it yet. Wind Repertory, windrep.org. And then they even did a subset of Creative Repertoire Initiative pieces. So there you have it. And the other thing that the Creative Repertoire website did, which was, I think, important for our peers, was any of us who were writing from the CRI group, about half of us at least, put up the templates of our pieces or something like our pieces that we did to be able to onto a resources page that could be downloaded so that other composers wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. If they wanted to know, okay, what does a 3-part flex piece look like? Or what does a cell-based piece, like what I did with a piece called Passages, look like? What's the recipe for that? We put those things up there for our peers to download, obviously at no cost. Just here, take it, run with it, do your thing. And I'm really glad we did that because I think that was helpful. I heard from a number of composers that really helped them get started.
Yeah,
So,
I love it. I remember when I was helping with Texas Bandmasters Association's conference last year, and I had Stephen and Frank. Here I am calling them by their first names. I feel like so posh right now. I'm drinking my San Pellegrino. Okay. But just learning about it. And, I'm a community band director. So we normally would have done a full summer season with weekly rehearsals, 5 or 6 performances throughout our community. It's an institution. And of course, last summer, it all ended. We just completely shut down. And I knew I wanted to try and get those who wanted to in the area, whether they had been playing with the band or not, this opportunity to learn some great music. So I actually bought and donated to the band. To Kelly did an arrangement of his 4 Shaker songs.
Right,
and we finally got enough people to contribute videos that we have our own little virtual band video. But I don't know that we could have done it without that because I wasn't sure about what the instrumentation was going to be, who was even going to be willing to submit a recording, because it can be very intimidating to try and record yourself perfectly beginning to end on any one piece, let alone 4. And so I can speak from personal experience what a incredible tool this has given us. And we've kept it in our folders. We're going to be performing it again this summer. And now I'm thinking, because only about half of our band has come back to in-person rehearsals, and I'm not sure what else I can possibly do to get more people to come back. We used to be about 80 people strong. And anyway, long story short, the point is we're back together now, and this is just such an incredible resource for bands like mine, which maybe we're not back to our full instrumentation, but we still want to have a full sound, and we still want to fulfill our mission of bringing music to our community.
And you want to play good music, and Frank's pieces are lovely. Those songs are lovely. He did a terrific job with that. So that's a great example.
So obviously some great things have come out of the pandemic. I feel so weird saying that because for so many people, it's been such a heartbreaking, challenging time. But we also have to see the other side of the coin and what immense benefits and things like the Creative Repertoire Initiative that have come out of this incredibly challenging time. I think of it like we've been put through the refiner's fire. And now we're coming out the other side a little more pure and a little more prepared.
Yeah. And it's very true. Everybody has had their own experience, their own unique experience with the pandemic, and it has spanned the whole range of emotions and experiences. And it's not, as with anything, it's not either or, it's both. And we shouldn't feel badly that good things have come out of it. At least good things came out of it for all the pain and suffering that has happened. At least good things. One of the good things, I feel, has been, people who had not previously embraced the technologies which are not new. Zoom, Skype, all that, web connections are not new. I've been doing it for a decade, but a lot of people weren't incorporating that as part of their daily experience for obvious reasons. And now they understand what it can do very well. We know what it doesn't do well. We know that until everybody has really fast internet connection, and that means everybody at the same time, we can't have synchronous audio. We can't use virtual reality to play our instruments together and actually feel like we're in a room together, the way we soon will be able to do, by the way. But this pandemic was not ready for that. Came too soon. And so you have to embrace and understand what you can't do with the current technology. But the other side of that shiny coin is to embrace what it does beautifully, how it brings people closer. You see each other in their natural habitats, in their environments. You can show people, the birds on your deck, or or the stuff behind you in your studio. You can share scores and listen to things, and everybody can see on their screen the materials, as opposed to being in the back of a band room or something, squinting at some little screen at the front. There is a level of connection, I call it digital intimacy, that is really quite wonderful when people become comfortable, using the medium. And we've seen that happen. We've seen that growth. That's been very, very positive. And I can speak to another project that I spent a lot of time working on that is relevant to this, which is it's a curriculum I came up with called the Putting the E in Ensemble curriculum. And the origin of it, the basis of it, and you say, what am I going to do with only, let's say 20 students instead of 80 or whatever. The one thing that we never had a chance to do, or band directors, I should say, not me, I'm not part of the we, but one thing that directors haven't had a chance to do when in their normal rehearsal periods is explore analysis and composition and even the tech stuff of recording techniques and things like that, all necessary pieces of knowledge. They haven't had a chance to explore that with their performance students because you're so focused at the podium on preparing for the next concert and rehearsing those pieces and making music together, which is great. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But there's more. There's more that we can be doing. And I got a call out of the blue from the director of bands at University of Washington, Tim Salzman, a wonderful man who did not know me at all, nor did I know him. We only knew each other by reputation. Beyond that, we did not know each other. But he knew that I was techie. I have that reputation, I guess. And he contacted me very soon after the first shutdowns because, if you'll recall, Washington State was hit first. We had the first big outbreak just north of Seattle. And so it was these schools and universities that got hit first with the shutdowns. And he contacted me like the second or third week in March saying, oh my gosh, I've got to get all these orchestra and band students through the end of the semester, through June. And I don't even know what to do with them. Can you help? He said, I want to keep them connected to each other. I definitely want to keep them playing their instruments, very important. And he said, somehow, I think composing is in there somewhere, but I don't know how to put my finger on it. And he had a suspicion that I might know how to connect that dot. And I think I did. Because I that evening, we hung up the phone. It was a lovely conversation. I was happy to meet the guy. He's such a nice guy. We've now become good friends over this past year. Yet another new friendship from the pandemic. Friendships of the pandemic. We can do a whole theme on that.
We could do a whole podcast on that. My goodness, amazing.
That's right. We could. But, that night, I gave a lot of thought to this. And as I was mentioning before, I thought about what does Zoom do well as opposed to what it doesn't do well? What can we do? And I wrote up a whole bunch of lesson plans, sort of a syllabus, and I sent it over to Tim. And I figured, well, maybe he'll just, pick and choose one or two little things here. Maybe they're kind of cool ideas, and then they'll, do their own thing. Fine. Well, he ended up doing the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker, everything, like by the book. And we kept, and he brought his assistants, his conducting students, etc., his master's students into it. They were wonderful. And together we sculpted an even better version, a bigger, broader version of it. And it grew and grew, and I kept, revising it, and I kept coming up with, more specific things than the lesson plan. And then it grew further when my friend, the wonderful band director of bands at University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, Glenn Hayes, he took a look at it, flipped out, and said, oh my gosh, this meets NAFME standards for high school and middle school. Let me and my wife, Christine, his wife, Christine, is very involved with the NAFME in Wisconsin. They created the high school and middle school versions of it. And what it is a way to get instrumentalists comfortable with coming up with a very short motif of their own, short composition, recording it on their instrument, sharing that file in a small group of their colleagues. Each large ensemble is broken down into small groups, 6, 7 people, and they all share their little motifs with each other. And they open up a digital audio workstation like Audacity, some free thing, GarageBand, easy, some multi-track thing, and you slot in these, let's say, 7 different motifs onto different tracks, and then the student gets to go to town making music out of them, making a composition, using this thematic material in any way they want to. And it gets more and more complicated as they go on and develop the piece. And it's so much fun. And the creativity that was pouring out of these students who had never before, most of them, ever composed anything, was astounding. And it continues to be. I ended up overseeing this with more than 30 schools this past year. And it blew my mind every time to see what these students were coming up with. And no two are alike. I mean, even the ones, where it's a group of 7 all using the same thematic material, every piece they put together was different. And then Tim's group actually took it, and a few others have done this too. Tim's group took it to the next level. They created videos of them playing these pieces live and working with the theater and dance departments and creating a whole multimedia thing on it. And I think they even want to do more live performance with it when we're back to live performance. But it's just been so inspiring to see what can you do with music students that keeps them playing their instruments but gives them a whole additional perspective on what it is to be a musician. Because when a music student understands form and motivic development, basic compositional aspects, that go into pretty much any piece of music they're going to be playing, if they can do that themselves, suddenly they have, here's that word again, an affinity for composition and for understanding the pieces that they are playing, written by all these other wonderful composers. They understand them so much better. They can identify what's going on when. It makes them much better, well-rounded musicians, and I think it gives them a really fun sense of self to realize that they too are creators. They can be creators as well as recreators. So it's been a very exciting journey to have done that project with so many students overseeing it.
That is so outstanding, Alex. And I think you made the point of fun. And I worry some days that we forget that music should be fun.
Yep.
And that is what drives the passion behind it. If we want students to join our bands, to play the instruments, to sing in the choirs, we have to make it fun, because that's what connects to them emotionally.
Yeah, connecting to them emotionally. I mean, you've had Scott Edgar, who I am a big fan of. I think I'm a member of his cult. He and Bob Morrison, they're cult of SCL. I am a new cult member. And
Me too.
I've spoken with them a number of times. And I know that you and Scott are friends, and he's done your show. They both have so much to say on this social emotional learning. To someone like me, that's never even been a thing, because of course music is emotional. So I've never not thought of music making as being not emotional. I'm using double negatives, but I've never not thought of music as being emotional. It's always emotional. But I realize that educators have to sometimes tweak the way they think things through, and it's easy, given the stresses of school and administrations and everything else, to end up being very goal-oriented. It's very easy, if you're preparing for a concert, to be very goal-oriented with blinders on. But one might be missing the bigger picture of what it is to be a holistically connected, immersed musician and human being. And all of that stems from emotional connection with the material. So yeah, what you're saying is spot on. It is absolutely that. It's emotional.
So, what if I wanted to get my hands on putting the E in Ensemble project?
I have a website up. If I didn't send you the link, I will. There's a link on my website that has that in it, and we'll include it on the podcast links. And it's on my website. And then people can. I offer all these materials for free. The lesson plans are all free. And then if anybody wants more of the resources, because I suggest using a drone, I create these different drones in different pitches, and all kinds of other resource materials that help with the project. Or if they want to zoom in me or some other consultants who've worked with the project, a really great list that's listed on the page, they can order that through my website too. But the lesson plans are all free, because my attitude is, again, if you figure something out, you want to help everybody with it, right? And I figured, hey, this is actually working. I want to spread the joy and have people use this as they see fit, and tweak it to their own needs. It's completely malleable. It's a whole bunch of lesson plans, but you don't have to do them per se, the way they're prescribed. You can do them in any way that works for you and your students. And so it's just been a blast to watch all this creativity from the educators and from the students on this.
Well, thank you on behalf of all of us for opening your mind and your heart to us, and your creativity, your willingness to truly push the boundaries is incredibly inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're all in this together. We're all on that boat out at sea, as you were talking about. We're all paddling, hopefully in the same direction. I mean, as I said before, what I like about this period of time is it has really forced the issue of embracing technology and embracing interconnectivity over the web, which has so many meanings now and in the near future. It's made people embrace it and understand it and not be afraid of it. And also to realize it's not either or, that we will still have live performance. Of course we want live performance. We miss that terribly. We want our sternums to be moved by sound waves. But we also need to stay connected all the time to each other, no matter where we are in the world, and save a few fossil fuels while we're doing it too. It's kind of nice not to be jumping on airplanes all the time.
This is a very excellent point. So what is next for you?
Right now, plotzing. Having just finished this big symphony, I have been enjoying just being able to deal with all the other things on my to-do list that were not time sensitive. You end up, as we all do this, right? You have the long, never-ending to-do list, which you will never get to the end of, because if you do, then you've stopped living, basically. I mean, you will never get to the last thing on your list, and that's a good thing. Think of it as a good thing. But you have to triage the list, right? And there's always the stuff that no matter how crazy your day is, you have to deal with this, and this. But then there's the other stuff that keeps getting put aside, until you can take a breath and really put your attention on it. So now I'm dealing with that stuff. I think it's challenging for composers who also are running their businesses and running their own publishing companies, which is, and many composers have heard me speak of how important this is in this day and age, to be able to maintain and control your copyright, because you're going to be able to make a very good living doing so. And publishers are wonderful. I have absolutely nothing against publishers. They can be superb partners for composers. And it's, every deal is different. But a composer who also, can control their own destiny solely, and use publishers as distributors, and have partnerships with publishers that are structured a little bit differently, might be in an even better financial position until they get to be, the next John Williams or something. So there's so many different ways of running one's business these days, because of computers and the internet. I mean, we did not have these choices 30 years ago. So that it's pretty exciting. And so but the trade-off, of course, is that for a composer, it does take a lot of time and attention and professionalism to deal with all of that, and to get the music out there and through all these distributors, et cetera, and into people's hands, and follow up with them, with the people using the music. And you have to be on top of the ball and tiptoeing on top of that ball, keeping it rolling like a clown. And that's me. And you have to enjoy it. for composers that don't enjoy that kind of thing, that's fine. And I always tell them that's what publishers are for, and will do a beautiful job. A good publisher will represent you wonderfully. Go for it. So it's nothing is one size fits all. But so what I spend a lot of my time doing now is I do a lot of recording, a lot of producing, a lot of engineering of my tracks, and I work with a wonderful engineer as well who helps with the mastering and mixing and things. And we've got this little thing going on with all my tracks, and which is a lot of tracks because my work is electroacoustic. And I keep up with the publishing, and I've got all these new releases coming out, and print jobs and PDF stuff, and getting them out there in the world. It's a lot, in addition to the upcoming pieces, But I have a little bit of a break before I have to start writing the next one. So, I put that in on purpose because I needed to play catch up.
You have a full life.
Yeah. And I really like to get out in nature, and now of course it's springtime and summertime, and it's just so wonderful to be out on this gorgeous island, and putting on my mud boots and trudging with my friends across this area called False Bay, which is filled with life. And it's called False Bay because it's about a mile. The mouth of the bay is about a mile from the shore. And when the tide pulls out, we have extreme tides up here because we're at 48.5 degrees. We're very high up. And our tide exchange is over 12 feet, I think. So when it pulls out, you can walk a mile out to the mouth of almost to the mouth of the bay, very close. And so, as you do so, trudging through, the mud, et cetera, you see all these fish and crabs and clams and, little critters, and the bird life is amazing. And herons and bald eagles and gulls and everybody having at it. And it's just spectacular, and breathing in that fresh air. So that, I think for any of us, not just composers, but any person, educators, absolutely, you have to fill your vessel up in order to have something to pour out again, right? And it's like what you were saying before about just needing that time for yourself. When you give so much to other people all the time, an educator is constantly on, and you're constantly serving the needs of all these students. And it's so beautiful, but it's exhausting. And you definitely have to cordon off that time in your calendar where you can set aside, some time that is going to be whatever it is, whether it's putting on your mud boots and trudging out into the muck, or watching Netflix, or whatever it's going to be. You need that time.
Well, speaking of time, I can't tell you enough how grateful I am that you've spent this time with me and with our listeners today, and for all the inspiring and encouraging work that you're doing for all of us right now. It does not go unnoticed, and I hope you know that.
Oh, that's very kind. That's very sweet of you. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend, for joining me for this episode. I have to tell you that when Alex was logging into Zoom to record this with me, it was the end of the day, and I was mentally fried from being on screen most of the day. I know you understand. I asked if she would be willing or okay with me to turn my camera off so that I could just focus on our discussion and not on the screen. She said, "Of course. In fact, I'll turn mine off too. Or even better, let me do this." And she switched her camera so I could watch the view from her office window. It looks out over the ocean, and she has multiple hummingbird feeders hanging from the rafters. As we talked, I got to watch the ocean waves, the boats, the birds, and it just filled my heart with the joy of the natural world. I hope this week you have a chance to spend some time in nature, even if it's just a grassy area or the lawn chair in your backyard. Just take some time to let it sink in. Get connected with the natural rhythms of the world, and appreciate the breath in your lungs and that the sun will shine every day you're breathing. And with that joyous thought, I leave you, my friend, to keep teaching on.